Welcome back to another episode of the She Got Lucky podcast. This is your podcast where we go beyond luck and we actually go into what it really takes to build a driving force of a business that people cannot switch off, that people cannot avoid. Your business is the one. Your business is the leader. And this is the podcast where we really break this down, where I bring on other leaders who have really defied luck, who have defied what the odds would say, and we go beyond what others see to be lucky and dive on into really what it takes. Today's episode, all right, let's dive on in. Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the She Got Lucky podcast. I am in my office today. I feel like I've been a bit everywhere, but I'm back in my office today and I am feeling all of the feels. Today's conversation is definitely going to require you to take some radical responsibility for perhaps where you have been on autopilot, where you have been placing the blame on others. And this conversation is truly going to allow you to take a step up, to elevate, to hit that next level in ways that I promise you don't even realize yet. It is such a big conversation, and perhaps if you're listening to it, it's not the right time to be listening to it. You're not in the right headspace. Or you're thinking, okay, I don't feel like I'm ready for this conversation. I can promise you're ready for it, but I do really want you to be in the right headspace because this is such a powerful, deep chat that I have with the beautiful Sarah Lambert. Now, if you haven't heard of Sarah Lambert before, let me introduce her, okay? Sarah is a transformational business coach who helps women scale their online businesses to 6 and 7 figures by mastering the inner game to create next level, aligned and effective external strategies. With 2 beautiful young kids, she built her business to $1 million brand, proving that success and family can thrive together. Sarah specializes in helping her clients create sustainable businesses, lives they love, and a legacy that changes the world. And just Sarah's energy in itself, I cannot wait to bring on, but her magic as well is just truly extraordinary. So, Sarah, welcome to the podcast. We got Sarah on the podcast. Sarah, welcome to She Got Lucky.
I am so happy to be here, Alicia. You are the absolute best.
So, Sarah, I want to dive straight on in, okay? So let's set the scene, right? It's 9:30 a.m. for me right now. It's 5:30 p.m. for you. We're on the opposite sides of the world, but we are just going to create pure magic in this episode. I absolutely know it. I feel it. So before we dive into your pure magic, and let me tell you, listening right now, this episode, these conversations we're having, Sarah, is truly, and I think I say this every time, but I really, really mean it. You'll listen to this episode and you'll be like, I need more of Sarah in my life. You have not met anyone like Sarah and like the work that Sarah does. So before we dive into that, Sarah, I would love to know, from the outside, you are drop dead, what on earth in every single way, right? Like, oh my gosh, beautiful family, beautiful life, beautiful success, beautiful business, beautiful human you are. Has there been a moment or has there been something where you don't get that without a lot of work? You don't get that without a lot of challenges, coming back from a lot of lows, you know? Has there been a moment where you've had that she got lucky moment?
Oh my gosh, I love this question so much because even before I started my business, I used to get really annoyed when people would tell me that I'm so lucky. Whatever it was happening in my life, I would be so confused by that because I could very objectively look at it and say, lucky? I made this happen. These are all based on choices that I made. And you had the same ability. I know that there are situations where certain people don't have the same circumstances and fortune that we do, but there's one person in particular in my life who would always tell me I was so lucky. And that would really trigger me and bother me. But one experience, or I would say something that really stands out when you asked me that question, was how I really got started on this entrepreneurial journey. Is I had a side hustle and a corporate job before I had kids. And while on maternity leave, I decided to go all in on my online business because I recognized that, wow, I suddenly don't have the same capacity that I did pre-kids, and I don't want to be trading my time for money anymore. And so I took what I had and I created a course, and while on maternity leave, ended up scaling that business to 6 figures and quitting my corporate job. And so many people said to me, oh my gosh, you're so lucky that you could quit your corporate job. You're so lucky that you have this business. And I thought that it was so strange because there was no, I don't want to say that there was no luck, because I also believe in lucky girl syndrome and you choose to create your luck. But I put in the hours. I was spending nap times and evenings when my husband got home working on my business and making those decisions so that I could have the things that I had. And so I thought it was so interesting how from the outside, people were just chalking it all up to luck, when behind the scenes, I know how much work and time and sacrifice went into that other people wouldn't have been willing to put in.
And I really love this as well, Sarah B, because probably maybe like 1 year into running my business, it became this big story of like anti-hustle culture. And I understand it. I get it. You know, there was this big like, oh, I'm busy, therefore I'm successful. And people filling time just to feel like they're doing well or they're doing things. But in the same sense, I also feel like it went a little bit too far in a sense, because people are like, oh, you shouldn't be working this hard. You know, you're promoting hustle culture. And like what you just said, I wouldn't be here today, and I don't believe you would be here today. I don't believe many of the successful people we look at if there wasn't that element of, okay, this is the time to grind. Okay, that can look different for everyone, but I feel like this anti-hustle culture in a sense, and it's quite a delicate conversation because people can become quite, oh, but you know, but what I'm saying is there's this balance. And I feel like I would love to hear your thoughts on this, because as you said, there was a period where you had to make sacrifices. You had to do things that other people wouldn't to get to that result.
Yes, this is such an important conversation because you're right. People misunderstand that. And I think that the toxic hustle culture, it can be detrimental for long periods of time if that's how you identify and you have to be busy. You don't allow yourself to rest. That's not good for anyone, and people recognize that. But I think we did swing too far on the pendulum, and there are going to be different seasons of your life and business, and sometimes you got to hustle. You got to do the things, you got to make the sacrifices and put in the work so that you can lean back. And it doesn't mean that it has to be extremes, like the next 6 months I'm going all crazy and I'm going to burn myself out and then I'm going to rest. It can be periods where it's a week long, or maybe it's a day where you're just pumping it out so that you can go rest the next day. You have to find your flow. But there was a time, because I actually became known for my course in creating passive income, I would talk about that freedom lifestyle. And a lot of people would come to me and they would say, yeah, I don't want to have to work a lot and I don't want to have to do this. And I'm like, don't get it twisted. You are going to have to put in work. I am not going to sell you some lie and some dream to tell you that, oh, just create a course and you'll never have to work again. I put in years of work before I ever made $1 from the course that I sold. And so that's another piece of that lucky puzzle, is that people would say you got so lucky because, you know, while you were on maternity leave, you launched your course and you made 6 figures. What they didn't look at was the years prior where I had been building my business, sharing educational content from like 2016, 2017, 2018, never making any money from my online business, to launch my course in 2019. And of course it did well. I was brand building for 3 years.
Yeah, spot on. And I really, really like that you brought this up as well, because it's interesting. I found that a lot of our parents, they were in a generation where there wasn't a lot of, for example, like that generational wealth. And a lot of our parents really, like wherever they are today, they worked very, very hard. And I remember growing up, my dad working 12-hour days, coming home and potentially working more. And for me, I created this story of, okay, in order for me to be successful, in order for me to have a successful business, this is what I need to do. Mm-hmm. And so what I find quite often is other people are in this similar sense. They had parents who have these beliefs. Well, nothing comes easy. You got to work hard. And again, I think there's this balance, because I think it's very easy on social media to scroll through and people being like, oh, I'm on the beach and I'm making this amount. And then people are like, well, why aren't I getting that? You know, like I put in 1 hour today and I'm not getting that. So again, there's things behind the scenes, there's that work in the meantime. But where do you sit in building? It's going to be different for everyone, but on letting go of this story that perhaps we hold, that nothing comes easy, you got to work hard to get the big results. I would love to dive into that a bit.
Yeah, this is so important because people don't realize how ingrained these beliefs are, and they have these conflicting desires or these conflicting beliefs. So, for example, somebody comes and they want to be able to make a lot of money without working a lot, but they also have a belief that in order to make money, you have to work hard. And so these two things are very conflicting. And then they wonder, well, why am I not able to make money without working long hours? But what they don't recognize is this deeper lying belief that is never going to allow them to get to that unless they change the narrative. And this was really big for me because I always had the narrative that I have to work harder than everyone else because I struggled in school. And so I have to work harder than everyone else to get the same result. And that was my reality. I would just work so hard just to be average. And I knew that if I wanted to create something different in my life, that's where I had to start. And it took me a while to actually figure that out. Once I did, I saw that as the key, and I had to then rewire that belief. And in order to do that, you first have to become aware of it. So I love how you brought that up, even just the awareness. What are the beliefs that you have that are contradicting the things that you desire? Start there. Think about what you want, and then think of all the reasons you don't think you can have it. And that's where your work begins.
So, and in way of the work, what does that look like? What is that with you in your world? Because it is very different. I actually had the experience when we actually met in person last year, Freedom Queen Live. I met the beautiful Sarah, and I loved it because we both got to experience each other's magic and each other's zone of genius. And what your work looks like is so unique, and it is so beautiful. You've made work, you've made that mindset work, you've made that deep work feel freaking beautiful. Okay, I'm sure it's not always, but in way of you, like in way of your work, when someone does, they want something, but they have these deep beliefs, really, really ingrained beliefs that contradict that. What does that work look like to be able to start to unpack that?
Yeah, I absolutely loved our experience and getting to be with you. And one of the things, before I answer that question, one of the things that was really is so interesting to see and so amazing to see is just like your level of service and how you are constantly just giving so much of yourself. And that what the conversation that opened up to were me saying, you know, can you receive? And this is a really big thing, especially for women who are just conditioned to give everything they have. And I could really see it in you of like, let us pour into you, Alicia, because you were pouring into everyone else. And so I just want to recognize you for your level of service and love for the people around you and how much you give without even being asked. And also your willingness to recognize that, I do see how that could actually limit me in certain ways, and being willing to face that. And so that was amazing that we got to do that. And so when it comes to someone recognizing, okay, I have contradicting beliefs and I have these things that I need to work through if I actually want to achieve the goal that I have for myself, that first level of awareness is so important. And then from there, to really simplify it, it's being conscious and awake in every moment, especially when that comes up. So let's say, for example, you have the belief that everything's harder for you. And what you want to do is you want to just start noticing when it comes up and catching it. And when it does, you're able to choose something differently. So when we think about our life, it's really just everything that you have, your entire day, your entire life is just a response to the actions that you're taking, the energy that you're putting out. And so it's in every single moment that we have the opportunity to change our life, to change who we are, to change the beliefs that we have. But we have to be awake. We can't be zombies just sleepwalking through life. We have to be able to notice these thoughts when they come up. And yes, there are tools and deeper work and processes that you can go through. And I take my clients through this behind the scenes, and I give other people the tools to do this with their clients. But if you really just dial it back and simplify it, it's like, can you become so hyper aware of your own thoughts, catch the ones that you don't want to have anymore, and actively choose to shift them? Actively choose to think something different in that moment, to show up differently. It can be as simple as that, but you have to wake up to your patterns and your conditioning and your beliefs in order to make a change.
Yeah, because I remember seeing, Sarah, and I'm not sure if you know the stat completely, but like I remember seeing a stat about the percentage of our days which is almost on autopilot. That you're
95%.
85, did you say?
I said 95.
95, far out. And it happens quite often. I'm driving and I might be driving for half an hour and I'm like, who the heck has just been driving?
Yeah.
I sort of wake up in a sense and I'm like, okay, obviously I've been awake. Obviously, it's safe. But consciously, I'm like, how did I just get from all the way back there to here? That sort of feeling. That's when we're in our autopilot. And that is really something that I just think, if you're in autopilot for 90% of your day and you're not doing the things that are different, they're not doing the things that are outside of the box, well, of course not, because the autopilot isn't going to steer outside of the line.
Exactly. And so people have these giant goals, especially, the people that we surround ourselves with and we are building our businesses alongside. We have these massive goals, but if you really look back, unless you are willing to change who you are, your beliefs, your identity, how are you ever going to really achieve different goals? And this doesn't mean that you have to be someone different than you innately are. It's not about saying, I have to be different. I can't be Sarah Lambert. I am always going to be Sarah Lambert, but it's about how am I going to look at myself? The way that I look at myself and the standard I hold myself to is going to determine my results. Everything I have now is a manifestation of what I believe is possible for me. So how am I going to raise the bar in what I believe is possible for me? And how am I going to show up as the person who believes that something is possible for them? And that happens in the micro moments. This doesn't happen in, I'm going to sell my house and move across the country and do these. Sure, that is a way to really force yourself into a completely different change because you have no other choice. But it's in every single day decision. It's in the moment that you decide to set your alarm an hour earlier and you actually get up. It's in the moments that you decide to take a deep breath before reacting the same way you would. It's in the moment that you choose to go post instead of saying you don't have time. All of these little micro moments, that's where the shift happens. And then over time, all of a sudden, your identity starts to match that and your results start to match that. And so you can't just keep going through your life on autopilot and expecting to show up at a different destination. You have to actively be a participant in your life and choose in every single moment, because in each moment, everything is a possibility. If we are just thinking about this moment and acting based on the now, then the result that we can create is unlimited. If we are acting from a place of pattern of what's happened in the past, I'm just going to go create more of that and do the same thing I've always done, then that's why we continue to get the same results.
Yeah. So I would really love, if you're up for it, for anyone listening right now, and perhaps they're listening to this episode, and whether it's the start of your day, the end of your day, you've been a little bit stuck in that autopilot mode. I would love if you could, is there a way that you could sort of just allow us to pause and bring us back to that conscious mind? That's the right thing that we're wanting, right? I've said it right. Yes.
Absolutely. Yes. Yeah. This is a great question. And it really just takes a moment. Honestly, it really is just the intention of it is everything. And so if it is you wake up in the morning and maybe it's just taking a moment of saying, I'm going to take a deep breath and I'm just going to be where my feet are. I'm just going to be present. In any moment that you allow presence, all opportunities open themselves up. And so it just blaring some music. No, just kidding. Taking a really deep breath and presencing yourself. And doing this in the morning is actually really powerful because you set the vibe for the day. I don't know about anyone else, but you know those days where you wake up and you immediately start scrolling? And then if you actually pay attention to it, you'll notice how frequently you grab your phone and scroll that day. So the first thing you do in the day kind of sets the tone. So setting the tone for the day intentionally of just taking that deep breath and being like, I'm going to be where my feet are. I'm going to be in the present moment as much as possible. And when you are in the present moment, suddenly you start to notice things. You start to notice the actions that you're taking subconsciously. You can do this in the evening, of course, as well. In the evening, it might be a little bit more reflection. Thinking to yourself, okay, what am I proud of today? What did I do today that was different? You know, that supports that next level version of myself. And to go even deeper on this, one of my favorite questions to ask yourself is, what am I avoiding feeling right now? And so a lot of our bad habits, our doom scrolling, our Netflix binging, binge eating, whatever vices, everyone has their different vices. It's always in avoidance of something. People not posting. You know, this for you would be very relevant. You probably have clients who pay good money to get you to teach them how to create content, how to create videos that will build their business, and then they don't go post them. They don't go create them. They're wanting the desire, but they're trying to avoid feeling judged. They're trying to avoid feeling pain or struggle, whatever that might be for them. So really looking at, okay, where didn't I show up the way I want to show up? And what was I avoiding? What was I avoiding feeling? And for me, you know, I might be in the middle of a launch and I look back on my day and I think, well, why didn't you talk about your offer today, Sarah? Why didn't you sell? Why didn't you send the email? This morning, you said you were going to send an email to your list. You didn't do it. What were you avoiding feeling by not doing it? Well, I was avoiding feeling disappointed that nobody was going to sign up from it. I was avoiding feeling vulnerable by sharing my story. You start to notice these patterns. And in that, you become so powerful because you wake up to them and then you can actively choose different. And so now I can ask myself that throughout the day of like, even today, I was feeling tired because I've been a little bit sick and I had a list of things I wanted to do. And I thought, oh, I'm just going to go have a quick power nap. And then I asked myself, well, what are you avoiding by having a nap right now instead of doing the things that you want to do? And I was like, oh, I'm avoiding going and like doing the hard thing. So I went and I did the hard thing. I did the work that I needed to do. And then I went and I rested.
Yeah, that's definitely resonate with a lot of what you just said. And I think many of us can, because there's always a way to be like, oh, but I'll just do this first. Or, oh, you know, and it does get to the end of the day and there's a few things. And it's not about ticking off everything off the list. It's just a case of looking at those key things. And I've got on my vision board this year, eat the frog first, do the hard thing first, rather than having that weight on you throughout the day. So I love this. And one of the things that I really love in your world, Sarah, is how you help your clients go from, as you say, a regular coach to a high impact coach.
Mm-hmm.
Can you explain the difference? Can you explain a lot of what you see and the difference between that and when you become that high impact coach?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things that I really noticed early on in my coaching business was that I was giving people the strategies, the tools, telling them exactly what to do, and then they just weren't doing it. And as someone who wasn't, I am an action taker, I am highly ambitious, I would be so confused because on the calls, they would be all gung-ho and they'd be like, yeah, I want to do this. And then they wouldn't do it. And I quickly realized that knowledge wasn't everything, that there are other gaps that need to be filled as a coach that take you from just a regular coach who can give someone a specific result to being a high impact coach where you can actually get to the root cause of what's stopping the person from getting the result, help them shift that very quickly so that they can go take action. So for example, let's use your work as an example, Alicia. Like I said, you work with people and there are probably often times where you want to bang your head against the wall because your clients are so amazing, yet they're not doing the things that they need to do in order to get the results. And like I mentioned, there's something deeper going on. And when you can very quickly help coach them through that, suddenly they want to go do the things. Or maybe they are doing the things, but then they're saying it's not working. And you can tell it's the energy. They're not confident in it. They're not showing up on camera the way they need to show up because there's this fear there. And so when you can get to the root cause and very quickly, it doesn't have to be your whole coaching session. It doesn't have to be your whole identity that you're a mindset coach, that you're an inner child coach, that you're a nervous system coach. But if you have the tools to be able to very quickly, within 5 minutes, shift something for someone on a deep level, everything you tell them to do after that is going to be 100 times more effective. And so it is my mission to bring this depth to not only the coaching industry, but all industries. Because in 2025 and beyond, there's no lack of knowledge. There is so much knowledge online. And the people and the programs that will really take off and that will thrive are the ones who facilitate really deep transformation, the ones that get people results and aren't just marketed really well. Because in an industry or in an online space where there are literally millions of people shouting very similar things, you cannot get someone into your world and not completely blow them away, because then you are constantly on this hamster wheel of needing new clients. But when you become a high impact coach and you are able to get someone really, really powerful and deep results, you not only have a client for life who's willing to pay you your highest rates, who is staying in all of your containers, but they are also telling everyone else. You are then having results that show your work to the world. You are going to go viral in people's souls and they are going to tell everyone they know about you. And suddenly you have a very sustainable business. And so the impact is both on a level of depth and on a level of volume, because I want your work to reach the most amount of people. And the way that you're going to do that is by creating a community of people who are so obsessed with the results that you've helped them get that they are telling everyone they know.
So for someone right now who perhaps is on that hamster wheel, okay, and it's a case of like, where do I get off? They're on that hamster wheel and they've got that. They've experienced that, my client didn't get the results they wanted. And they feel a lot of that responsibility on them. So then the next time they go show up to sell something, they've got that weight of, oh, but is this the best thing on the internet? Because that client didn't get the result.
Yeah.
So they're going into promoting this offer with that energy. And it's just that cycle, that hamster wheel, as you said. So how do we start to break that cycle so that way you can start to step into a coach who, because the fact is, it cannot guarantee results. There are so many things that can impact this. And I feel like a lot of coaches starting off, of course, we want everyone to experience the best results at any point. But at the start, a lot of that responsibility feels like, well, if your client didn't get the result, that means you're a bad coach. Regardless of the epic results other clients have got, that one client, it's like one bad review, one bad comment, it can derail it all. So I would love you to perhaps where to get off this hamster wheel and how, especially when you've had experiences like this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I love this because it really speaks to the people that really care about their clients. And that is so important. I only work with people who truly care, and they're not just here to make money. They're here to make a difference. And absolutely, we're going to make money doing it, but it really does start with that service. And so in order to get off this hamster wheel, I think part of it is that our own work. And doing this work with my clients creates such a inner knowing and confidence in themselves that they understand that it is not their responsibility to get people results, in that they're going to match energy. They're going to bring their 100%. And as long as they can be confident that they brought their 100%, they're not taking on other people's projections onto them. So important to do this work so that someone might be really mad at you. And that's very triggering. That's really hard. There have been times in my business where I've had people say that it's not working for them and want a refund. And that is such an expansive moment because I have to step back and say, okay, what's actually happening here? And I have to walk myself through that so that I can come back to my mission and know that it actually has nothing to do with me. So being able to separate yourself from other people's projections and emotions is so important. And one of the questions that I always ask myself or have my clients ask them is, what is the story you're telling yourself right now? Again, waking up to what's happening below the surface.
Yeah.
And I often tell this story about this time when I was walking past a neighbor, and I would walk past her all the time, and I would always smile and wave, and she would never reciprocate. She would always just look at me and then look away. And I caught myself one day thinking, why does she hate me? And I saw that thought and I laughed and I thought, she doesn't hate me. She doesn't even care about me, and that's okay. This isn't about me. Who knows what's going on in her mind, what's going on in her world? But it highlighted for me this need to be liked, right? And so suddenly I was like, Sarah, this has nothing to do with you. Yeah. And in that moment, I was able to shift my energy, come back to my own power of it doesn't have anything to do with me. But you have to be able to be awake. So when a client's trying to do the same thing to you, when a client's trying to project something onto you, for you to be able to stay in your power and knowing that is going to be your work first and foremost. But when it comes to the high impact method of coaching, this is where you are going to become so confident and this won't be a problem for you anymore, because while you can't guarantee specific results for everyone, I can guarantee that if someone does the work that we do, they will see results. Can I tell them how much money they're going to be making next month? Can I tell them how they're going to meet the love of their life and when and all that? Absolutely not. But what I can tell them is that how they're going to feel, how they're going to show up in their life. And usually people actually create results that are exceeding their expectations. And a lot of times it's not what they thought they wanted, because they come to me and they think they want one thing. They then see the massive inner transformation, and then they actually create what they need to be creating, the result that they needed to have versus what they thought they had to have.
Yeah, and that actually really took me back to, I was on a retreat 2 years ago now, and it was my first ever non-business retreat, which in itself was a moment I got to be proud of myself for, okay? So putting myself first, and for 24 hours on, one of the days of the retreat, no communication. So it wasn't just talking, it was just no communication. So you just in your own space, your own mind, the facilitators could talk, but there was no talking, yourself, no sort of signing or anything like, thank you or sorry or whatever. There was none of this. And we went on a walk, and I remember walking past people, and people were saying, hi, like definitely, I'm not sure about, I remember when I was in America, not everyone was just as friendly, I'll just say this, but when you're walking here in Australia, people are always, morning, hi, and so I was walking in this forest and, or nature, and people were like, hi, and I couldn't say anything because I was not communicating for that 24 hours. And in my head, I was like, oh my gosh, they probably think I'm a bitch. Like, oh, and there was such a need. It was one of the hardest parts of the no talking because I was just like, these strangers have kindly said hello. It's in our, like, this is what you do. This is a nice person. This is what they do. And so it really did call me out in a sense of like, why? Like that presence. So obviously there was so much power in it, but it was also really recognizing growing up being like, this is what a good girl does. This is what a nice girl does. And I think letting go of that good girl, what a good girl is, what a good girl acts like, was also one of the most powerful things I did in my business, because it's like, this is the part where we can scrap the pages and rewrite. So when it comes to this, the good girl, how many of your clients come to you and you see this and it holds them back in a way, or perhaps it doesn't? What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I think that you and I can really relate on that, and a lot of women can. And whether or not that is what they identify with of, oh, I need to be liked. It is safe to be liked. I just need to stay in line and I'm safe. Whether they identify with that or something else, there's always something. There's always something below the surface that is controlling how they show up. And that definitely is that people pleasing, just be good and you'll be safe, is a very common one. And it does hold us back in our business, because building something like we're building, it requires us to be leaders. And people don't always, the best leaders in the world aren't the ones who try to people please everyone. They're the ones who see the vision, see the mission, and relentlessly move towards that. And sometimes that pisses people off. And if we are unwilling to make anyone upset, of course, we're not going to say what we want to say. We're not going to say what we need to say. We're not going to show up the way we need to show up. And you can't be your most authentic self. People talk all the time about authenticity. But what I find interesting is nobody talks about the fact that most people don't even know who they authentically are. And even if they do, they don't feel safe enough to show up in that authenticity, because that is so dysregulating. Just like you not being able to say hello, that probably made you dysregulated, because it's like, I can't control this situation the way that I want to control it. I can't control the way someone's going to see me right now. And that's very, very uncomfortable. And so unless you're willing to be uncomfortable, that's not going to change. And you're not going to be able to show up your most authentic way, because you're trying to wear this mask. You're trying to control the way that people see you. And so nobody talks about that. They just tell people, show up authentically. Well, most people think they are. They think they are, but they don't realize that they're wearing all of these masks to stop them from feeling whatever feeling they're trying to avoid, of not being good enough, or making sure that people like them because that's how they feel safe. These are all defense mechanisms that our nervous system has put into place to keep us safe throughout the years. But there comes a point where we have to take them off if we really want to step into our highest self.
And I think as well on this, in order to show up online, in order to scale your offers, you need that level of vulnerability of, okay, I'm putting myself out there, and I can guarantee you there is going to be someone who says something, who doesn't like your program, who doesn't like you, who doesn't like the sound of your voice, who thinks you're this, who thinks you're that. Like, there is going to be at least one person who does this. And in you saying before, recognizing where you are avoiding, recognizing these things, I remember when I was growing so fast on Instagram, I didn't want to hit the 100K. And I cannot tell you how fast my growth stopped, because I was like, oh, I'm starting to get hate. I don't want hate. I don't want to grow because the more I grow, the more hate I get. And I'm just trying to figure out how to deal with this. And I think whether it's showing up online and you're like, I want to go viral. Showing up online, I want to get X amount of followers. I want to, scale my offer to 400 people. But if you're not willing to be disliked, have this element of, okay, but I want everyone to like me. If you're at the moment dealing with somebody who is defaulting, who is asking for a refund, who commented on a post the other day, whatever, this is your test. Because when you're able to hold this, when you're able to handle this, that is when you're going to see massive momentum. And I think what you've just said, it dysregulates you. But in those moments, because it's one thing for me to be like, if you can hold this, great, this is next step, blah, blah, blah. How do you hold it? How do you sit with feeling dysregulated and allowing yourself that level up in a sense?
This is such a great question, Alicia, and this is 100% it. You have to be able to grow your capacity for all of it. And I've experienced the same thing where I had a post go viral last year, and I think it hit like 500,000 views, and there's so many comments, and people like Amanda Francis commented on it, and it wasn't a nice comment. It wasn't a mean comment, but it was kind of disagreeing with what I was saying. And I remember 90% of the comments on that post were so positive and people felt so seen by it, but there were the 10% that were not happy with what I was saying. And I remember at first noticing how dysregulating this was of, oh, wow, I'm being misunderstood. Those 10% of people were misunderstanding me. And it was going down the wrong path of the people who it was for got it. And they felt so seen. And I anchored into that. This is people that this is for, get it. Everyone else, it's okay if they misunderstand me. But I had to actually regulate my nervous system. Absolutely. And so in these moments, I love them because when I'm triggered, that's an opportunity for me to expand my capacity. So what you do in these situations where you start to feel dysregulated in a situation, regardless of what it is, you start to feel something. And this is where I want you to ask yourself, what am I avoiding feeling right now? I'm avoiding feeling misunderstood. I'm avoiding feeling judged. I'm avoiding feeling seen. Whatever comes up, I want you to actually tune into it and feel it. So if you're avoiding feeling misunderstood, you're already feeling misunderstood. The dysregulation is coming from the fact that you're not allowing yourself to feel something that you're already feeling. And the more you avoid it, the more that you actually create that feeling. It's such a paradox, right? We think, let me just try and avoid this by distracting. Then you end up feeling more of it. And then you try to, whatever you can to try and avoid it. And it just gets bigger and bigger because it's still there. What you want to do is you want to face it. You want to feel it. You can process this. And when you do, suddenly you have more capacity for it. I want you to think about, let's use fear of judgment as an example. Let's say you have a glass of water and it's filled to the brim of fear of judgment, and somebody nudges it. That fear is going to spill over.
Yeah.
But if you actually just decided to empty that fear of judgment of like, I can feel judged, and suddenly your cup is empty. And then when something happens, it doesn't have this huge trigger. It might add a little bit of water to your cup, but suddenly you have more capacity in the cup to be judged. But you have to intentionally empty that cup. And the way we empty our cup is we feel the feeling. You feel the fear of judgment in your body. It's already there.
Yeah.
You can't feel something that's not already there. There's a really good analogy of this in the book Untethered Soul by Michael Singer. And he talks about how our triggers are like thorns. And let's say you have this thorn in your side, and you spend your whole life trying to protect the thorn. You build a little, contraption that covers up the thorn, but then you need to build new clothes, and you can't go too close to people. Otherwise it will hurt your thorn. you can build all of this around your life to protect yourself from being triggered and for that thorn hurting, or you could just pull the thorn out. And feeling your feelings is you pulling your thorn out. Do you want to walk around with all of these thorns in you trying to protect, and I can't say what I want to say because it might trigger this thorn? Or do you want to rip all the thorns out, face your fears, and then safely be able to authentically share and show up?
It's really got me thinking here. It's really got me thinking, which I
What's
love.
coming up for you?
Because what's really interesting, we spoke about it together, giving your power away in a sense. And for most women, there are so many ways that they are leaking their power in a sense.
Yeah.
And it's one thing to say, take your power back. I want my power back. I'm claiming my power. I'm getting all of this. But I think there is this requirement to understand where has your power gone, that awareness piece that you have just said, right? And you're probably going to say, Alicia, are you avoiding my conversation because it's uncomfortable? But stick with me, right? I'm going to think on this. Okay? Because I really want to sit with this idea of the thorn and everything. But what I want to ask you is, when was a time that you allowed your power to go elsewhere? Okay, maybe it was someone, maybe it was something, maybe it was a fear, maybe it was a thought, a belief. What did you sort of lose your power to, and how did you claim it back?
This is such a great question. And immediately the instance of when my power was taken away came up, and I thought to myself, did I ever get my power back? So this is going to be interesting. So a few years ago, I was hired by a very famous coach in the industry. Like, she's best friends with like boss babes. Like, she's a multi-millionaire in LA. And she hired me to help her create her certification program. She has a coaching certification program, and she hired me to help her put that together, that curriculum. And so that was an amazing experience, working very closely with this woman. And she loved my work, and I was asked to be a mentor coach inside of her program of hundreds and hundreds of students. And a lot of those students started reaching out to me and wanting to hire me. And she got really triggered by this. And I can say that I did not handle the situation as good as I should have, because I was avoiding an awkward conversation. I was avoiding addressing it with her because it was uncomfortable. Yeah. And in doing so, I made the situation so much worse, to the point where she didn't want a relationship with me anymore. And I think that for her, she was very triggered, and she also needed to take responsibility for her side of it, of like, her reaction is her role. The way I handled it is what I'm going to take responsibility for. And I definitely gave my power away, in that I was putting her on this pedestal, and I was scared to have the conversation. I felt like I'm going to be in trouble because she's going to be mad that her clients are coming to me. We do very different things. And I could objectively in my head talk myself, well, we do different things. You're not doing anything wrong. And I wasn't doing anything wrong, but I was putting her on this pedestal. And instead of just going to her and saying, hey, this is what's going on, I'm going to be working with these people, I avoided it. She found out some other way, and then it caused this rift in our relationship. And so that relationship kind of ended to the point that I couldn't necessarily remedy that relationship. Yeah. But in terms of taking my power back, moving forward from that, it was a really big eye-opener of where I put people on a pedestal and become a smaller version of myself, that I feel like I need to apologize, that I feel like I'm doing something wrong. And so now when I notice myself doing that, because I had to learn the hard way of losing this relationship that was really beneficial for my career, and also just someone that I cared about, I was able to see how detrimental, try to avoid being in trouble, and you actually create that even more. And so now I really recognize where I'm falling into these old patterns of, where can you just, I didn't know what I was doing and I didn't realize, and da-da-da. And now it's like, no, face the uncomfortable conversations and do what you need to do. You're a leader, and you can avoid it being way worse by doing that.
Yeah. So, look, like, honestly, there's so many things I want to talk to you about, like even this conversation about putting people on a pedestal. But what I would really love, because, you know, I am aware it's coming into your evening, your beautiful time with your beautiful, precious children and husband. But can you think of some words, a quote, anything that, like in that moment where you realized where your power had gone, where you needed to sort of claim it back, has there been a sentence, a phrase, a quote that has literally pivoted or changed everything in your career that you can think of, you can share with us?
Oh, that's a hard one. Trying to think of something like specifically to that. I can't necessarily think of a quote, but I think that if I were just going to think of something to really live by, it's that everything is a response to my energy. And I teach this to my kids all the time. Like, we are all so powerful, and we have to take such responsibility for everything in our life, all of the results. And when we can take radical responsibility for the situations we're in, the results we're getting, the way people are treating us, when we learn to take radical responsibility and realize that everything is just a response to our energy and who we are being, we become so powerful. And so that's something that I teach my kids, that I live by, of how can you, like, I'm never going to be a victim. I'm always going to be able to look at myself in the mirror and say, how are you contributing to this? What can you shift? And that is life-changing.
And can I ask, how are you teaching your kids that?
Yeah. I was actually recording a video for my high impact coaching certification today, and I was telling a story about how I use a lot of my coaching techniques on my kids, because this is the best way to help anyone, is by guiding them versus telling them what to do. And so one of the ways is by helping them come to create the answers on their own, instead of always giving them the answer, this is what you should do. So the example I gave in the recording today was, my son asked me, well, my buddy keeps coming up to me and saying, you don't even like me anymore, you hate me. And it was instinctively, I wanted to say, well, make sure you go tell him that you don't hate him, and et cetera, et cetera. I wanted to tell him what to do, but instead I asked him, well, why do you think he's saying that? And he answered, and I'm like, and what do you think he wants to hear? And he answered, and I'm like, so what are you going to do tomorrow when he says that? And he answers, and suddenly he's come up with the answer. And not only is that going to give him confidence, he's also going to know how to work through that in the future. And that is giving him a skill. He's 6 that a lot of people don't have even in their 20s and 30s. And so that's one way. And another way is, my kids, they're 4 and 6, and they fight like siblings do. And one thing that I always say to them is, you're giving your power away. And so if one of them does something to the other one and that they get the reaction they want, I'll say, well, Penelope, like, who has the power right now? And she'll be like, he took my power. I'm like, yeah, he has your power. How can you get your power back? And she's like, I'm going to calm down. Yes, you calm down. You don't have power when you're all triggered and when you're upset and when you're freaking out. And so it's actually come back to bite me sometimes, because then if I get mad, she will literally look me in the eye, 4-year-old girl, and look at me and say, I'm taking your power right now. And I will say, you're right. You are taking my power right now. And another thing that I do is, I always teach them that it's not their job to make me happy. It's not their job to make anyone happy. It's their job to make themselves happy. And even I'll get mad and I'll react. And later I'll say, I'm really sorry for getting upset and yelling. Whose job is it to calm mommy down? Whose job is it to make mommy happy? And they know it's mommy's job. It's mommy's job. I'm like, so was it your fault that I got mad? No, it's not my fault I got mad. Whose fault is it that mommy got mad? It's mommy's fault she got mad. Yes. Just the same way, if they say, you made me mad, I can say, I understand that you're mad, but mommy didn't make you mad. I understand you don't like what mommy said, but mommy didn't make you mad, right? And so just helping them see that they are responsible for their reactions. They're responsible for their emotions and how they show up in this world. And that's what's going to determine the results and the whatever they manifest in this life.
I love it. I love it. Yeah, look, definitely if you're there thinking like, okay, Sarah, I want to learn more of this parenting stuff from you, don't worry. We've all said that, because She's incredible at many things, but I'm just in awe of watching these children grow up because they're just going to be absolutely, they already are, but they're going to be phenomenal human beings in the way that you're parenting them and sharing so much of your magic that you help full adults, full humans, you help them with. They're getting that insanely a head start. Sarah, thank you so much for coming on the podcast, sharing your magic. How do people find more of you? How do people find, okay, like everything I want more of? Where do they come to and how can they join your world?
Oh, well, thank you so much for having me and for your kind words. That really means more than anything to me. And I love any opportunity to talk to you. And I hang out on Instagram mostly. The Sarah Lambert is my handle. And you can find everything you need there. But it is just such a pleasure to be here and to be able to have these deep conversations. I feel like we've covered so much and we could talk for hours, but I just am so grateful for you and these conversations.
I hope you have enjoyed this episode. I will see you in the next podcast episode. And if you are enjoying the podcast, please, 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 please leave a review. Leave a comment. Let me know what you're enjoying so that I can create more of that for you. And because I want to feature you in upcoming podcast episodes. And that's for me for now. I'll talk to you in the next episode.